Set in Denmark, the story begins with three homicide detectives, Carl, Hardy, and Anker, assigned to watch a house. But when they finally go inside, they discover that the person living there is already dead. Then, without warning, mysterious gunfire erupts and all three officers are shot. 3 months later, Carl is shown to have survived the attack, but he is clearly still carrying the trauma. His hands tremble, and it is obvious that the incident has left a deep mark on him. Even so, Carl decides to meet with his superior, Marcus, because he wants to return to duty. Marcus, however, had originally wanted him to remain on leave for another 6 months, especially since Carl is still relying on sedatives. Marcus tells him that he can no longer return to the homicide unit. The fate of Carl's former partners, Hardy and Anker, has also been grim. And with Carl in such a fragile mental state, Marcus reassigns him to a new division called Department Q. This department handles unsolved cases that have remained open for the past 20 years. Carl's job is to close those old cases one by one, while also figuring out why they were never solved in the first place. Whether he likes it or not, he has no choice but to accept the assignment. He heads down to the basement to begin working, only to find that his new office looks more like a storage room packed with old files than an actual department. There he meets a man named Assad, who has been assigned as his assistant. Assad has already cleaned and organized the room, even arranging the old case files across the walls to make the work easier. Seeing how enthusiastic Assad is, Carl tells him that sorting through all these forgotten cases is basically pointless. To him, the department is nothing more than a formality, the kind of place usually given to officers who are close to retirement. This is where the forgotten cases begin again. Welcome to Department Q, the keeper of lost causes. Carl then tries to call Marcus, but before he can focus on that, his attention is caught by a photograph of a woman. He becomes curious about her case. The woman is named Merete. She disappeared on a ferry and was never found. Assad explains that the case has been open for 5 years and will most likely be closed soon. The official theory is that Merete took her own life by jumping off the ship, but Carl does not believe that explanation, especially because Merete had brought along her younger brother, who has special needs, on the day she vanished. Merete was a rising political figure in Denmark at the time, popular with the public and often seen giving speeches at major events. She lived alone with her brother Uffe. Whenever she went to work, someone would stay behind to take care of him until she returned home. Meanwhile, in another place, Carl decides to dig deeper into the case and uncover the truth behind Merete's disappearance. Assad reminds him that they are not allowed to conduct an active investigation, since their job is only to close old cases. But Carl ignores the warning and continues anyway. They head to the harbor to meet a witness named Lisbeth, who saw Merete and Uffe standing in line to board the ferry. Another witness recalls briefly greeting them on the ship and mentions that Merete was seen with a man, possibly someone she was romantically involved with. As the investigation unfolds, several theories begin to surface. One possibility is that the man pushed Merete overboard, but that idea seems unlikely given how risky it would have been. Another witness claims that Merete was seen entering the men's restroom, which raises suspicion. Carl, however, believes she may have gone there while searching for Uffe, who had wandered off. This theory gains more weight when another witness reports seeing Uffe being led away by a man in a leather jacket. What actually happened that day begins to take shape. Uffe was deliberately led away by someone. Merete, realizing her brother was missing, searches for him and eventually reaches the parking area. There she finds Uffe in a confused state. Moments later, a stranger appears from behind. Unable to do anything, Uffe can only tap on a car, hoping for help. But before anything can happen, the man overpowers Merete and knocks her unconscious. When Merete regains consciousness, she finds herself trapped in a pitch-dark room. There is no visible way out, only a thick glass panel and a heavy metal door. She tries to escape and calls out for help, but no one responds.
Hello? Hello?
Then a light turns on, and a mysterious voice informs her that she is inside a high-pressure chamber. She is given 2 buckets, one for food and one for waste, both to be replaced every 24 hours. The voice makes it clear that she will never leave this place. Soon after, the pressure inside the room increases to 2 atmospheres, causing intense pain in her ears. The voice assures her that she will eventually get used to it. Before going silent, it promises to return and speak to her once every year. At the same time, Carl visits a care facility to meet Ufa. A nurse explains that Ufa was involved in a car accident when he was 8 years old. The trauma caused severe brain damage, leaving him with special needs. On that same day, he lost both of his parents and developed a dissociative condition. Since Merete disappeared, his condition has only worsened. Carl approaches Ufa and explains that he is trying to investigate what happened to Merete. He then asks about the man in the leather jacket who may have led Ufa away on the ferry, but Ufa does not respond at all. No matter what Carl says, there is no reaction, and in the end, Carl has no choice but to give up and leave. The next day, Carl tracks down a man named Taga. As soon as Taga realizes the old case is being reopened, he becomes visibly nervous and insists that it should have remained closed. This immediately raises Carl's suspicion, leading him to question whether Taga had anything to do with Merete's disappearance. Taga quickly denies any involvement. Carl presses further, suspecting that the two may have been in a relationship at the time, but Taga dismisses that idea, explaining that he and Merete barely knew each other and had only gone on 2 dates. He also admits that he was already married back then. Worried that his name might get dragged back into the case, Taga eventually threatens to report Carl to Marcus, forcing Carl to leave. After that, Carl reaches out to Merete's former assistant, Sos. Meanwhile, Assad suggests that they should try gaining Ufa's trust first, hoping he might eventually share something useful. That same night, Assad returns to the care facility to approach Ufa more gently. At the same time, Carl meets Sos at a bar. She explains that ever since the accident, Merete had been living alone with her brother. She also reveals that Merete was not interested in serious relationships. Her connection with Taga was nothing more than a brief encounter, and she had similar short relationships with several other men. Carl then asks about the last man Merete was seen with. Sos recalls that about a month before her disappearance, they attended a congress in Göteborg. During the event, Merete spent time with a man, but Sos never saw his face because Merete went back to her room earlier. Meanwhile, in another place, Merete's condition continues to deteriorate. She has been trapped inside the high-pressure chamber for hundreds of days. Each day, she counts the time, repeating her own name and her brother's name just to hold on to her sanity. Occasionally, she screams, begging to be released, but no answer ever comes. The only person she ever sees is a silent man who delivers food, then disappears without a word. A year passes, and somehow Merete manages to survive her first year inside that chamber. The light turns on again, and for the first time in a long while, the man holding her captive speaks. He increases the pressure to 3 atmospheres, pushing her body even further, and then leaves her with a chilling certainty that he will return again in another year. The story then shifts back to Carl and Assad. Carl brings up the detail about the man Merete met during the Congress in Sweden and asks Assad to track down the list of attendees. It does not take long before they obtain the full list along with photographs. They begin sorting through hundreds of images, focusing on every moment where Merete is seen interacting with different men. But with so many faces, it becomes difficult to pinpoint exactly who Sos was referring to. At the same time, Marcus finds out what Carl has been doing and immediately orders him to stop the investigation and move on to another case. Carl ignores the order completely. Instead, he and Assad return to see Ufa. By now, Assad has managed to build a sense of trust with him. He carefully shows Ufa the photos from the Congress, hoping to trigger a reaction. And it works. The moment Ufa sees one particular photo, his breathing becomes erratic. He stands up suddenly and tries to push the photo away. That reaction is enough. Carl matches the image with the Congress records and finally identifies the man. His name is Daniel Hale, a representative from a major company called Biodynamics, based in Göteborg. Meanwhile, Merete's suffering continues to escalate. At one point, she develops severe pain in her teeth. Her captor hands her a pair of pliers, leaving her with no choice but to pull out her own tooth. Blood spills everywhere, but she uses it to smear the glass, trying to block his view. When she refuses to clean it, the man responds by increasing the pressure again. Unable to endure the pain, she is forced to wipe it clean. The next day, Carl looks into Daniel Hale's background and uncovers something unexpected. Daniel reportedly died not long after Merete disappeared, drowning in a boating accident. Determined to confirm this, Carl and Assad travel to Sweden, heading to the lake where Daniel died, with help from local police. Carl speaks to a fishing equipment seller who knew Daniel. The man mentions that Daniel was not always alone when he came there. At the same time, Assad discovers a crucial detail. The man in the Congress photo is not the real Daniel Hale. The person who died in the lake is not the same man seen with Merete. Someone had been using Daniel's identity, attending the Congress under his name, and then later killing the real Daniel to erase any trace. This revelation changes everything. Carl and Assad begin to suspect that the real Daniel may have known something about the impostor, or that there was some kind of connection between them that led to this carefully planned deception. At the same time, the Swedish officers assisting them receive a call from Copenhagen. The Danish police order that Carl and Assad are not allowed to remain in Sweden and must return immediately. But the two of them ignore the order. Instead, they track down one of Daniel's acquaintances, a man named Johan. They ask if he recognizes the man who had been posing as Daniel. Johan confirms that he does. The man's name is Lars. He explains that Lars and Daniel grew up together in an orphanage in Denmark. However, Daniel rarely spoke about Lars, and it seems their relationship was far from close. Carl asks for the address of the orphanage where they both lived. But as they leave, Swedish police are already waiting, ready to detain them for refusing to comply with orders. Not long after, the story returns to Merete. The light turns on again, marking the passage of another year. This time, the man holding her captive gives her something different. He allows her a brief moment to finally see his face. As she steps closer to the glass, everything comes flooding back. She remembers the Congress in Sweden, where she met a man who introduced himself as Daniel. They talked, connected quickly, and eventually spent time together. It seemed like nothing more than another short encounter. But now the truth becomes clear. The man who has been keeping her trapped all this time is Lars. Back in Copenhagen, Carl and Assad are forced to return. They try to explain to Marcus that Lars had stolen Daniel's identity, but Marcus refuses to listen. Their badges are taken away, leaving them unable to act as police officers. Even so, Assad manages to track down the orphanage where Lars and Daniel once lived. Carl and Assad go there and begin digging into their past. They learn that Daniel had been brought to the orphanage after his mother died during childbirth. His father left him there, unable to care for him. Lars, on the other hand, had a very different reputation. He was known for violent behavior, often acting out and even hurting the staff. Records show that Lars only stayed there for 2 years. After leaving, he lived with his biological mother, who was disabled and relied on a wheelchair. His family had been involved in a tragic car accident that killed his father. As Carl and Assad continue to investigate, they uncover a crucial connection. Both Lars's family and Merete's family were involved in the same accident on that very day. Lars and his family were traveling when they crossed paths with Merete's car. In that moment, Merete had been playfully covering her father's eyes, causing him to lose control of the vehicle. The crash changed everything. Lars lost his father and younger sister, while his mother was left permanently disabled. Meanwhile, Merete walked away from that accident without serious injuries. That contrast is what planted a deep and lasting resentment in Lars. After the crash, Lars's mother was left permanently disabled, and he was forced into adoption. But life in his new home was far from safe. He suffered abuse from his adoptive father, and eventually he could not endure it any longer. He ran away and ended up in an orphanage. Even there, his past continued to haunt him. He was bullied, isolated, and pushed further into emotional instability. Over time, all of that pain turned him into a violent and deeply troubled person. As an adult, he even took revenge on his adoptive father. Later on, Lars found work as a waiter. One day he saw Merete again, now a successful politician preparing to attend a major congress in Sweden. In that moment, all the anger he had buried for years came rushing back. Determined to get close to her, he reached out to Daniel, who had become a successful figure, and used his name to gain access to the event. From there, Lars began stalking Merete. It is revealed that he was the one who led Uffe away on the ferry, creating a distraction to separate them. That moment gave him the opportunity to attack and abduct Merete. After capturing her, Lars took Daniel out to a lake under the pretense of fishing and killed him, cutting off any trace that could lead back to the stolen identity. Now Lars lives quietly with his mother, hiding in plain sight. One day, as he prepares to leave for the city, he notices Carl and Assad arriving at his house. They enter and look for his mother, Lulla. Claiming to be police officers, they ask about Lars, but without identification, Lulla becomes suspicious. She tells them that Lars has been away at sea and has not returned for 6 months. Carl and Assad leave, asking her to contact them if he comes back. But the moment they step outside, Carl realizes that Lulla was lying. They split up and begin searching the area. Lars spots them and immediately heads to his hidden location, the same place where Merete has been held all this time. He turns on the light and prepares to end everything. His plan is to increase the pressure until the oxygen runs out, causing her body to fail from the inside. For Lars, this is not just about revenge. In his mind, it is justice for the accident that destroyed his entire life. Lars slowly begins increasing the air pressure inside the chamber, pushing Merete closer to her limit. At the same time, Carl notices a locked room nearby. Something feels off, so he forces it open. Assad arrives just as Carl is breaking in, trying to figure out what he has found. Moments later, Lars suddenly appears behind them. His presence raises immediate suspicion, especially since Lula had claimed he had been gone for months. Lars brushes it off, saying he has been home all along and that his mother simply forgot. Assad starts pressing him about Merete, but Lars denies everything. Carl and Assad then insist that Lars come with them. Meanwhile, inside the pressure chamber, Merete's condition continues to worsen. Her body shakes uncontrollably as the pressure keeps rising. Outside, Carl questions what is inside the locked room. Lars claims it is just storage for farming equipment, but the large number of fuel containers makes Carl suspicious. It suggests that Lars has been running a generator for something hidden. As the tension builds, Lars suddenly attacks. He stabs Assad and makes a run for it. Even while injured, Assad urges Carl to ignore him and go after Lars. Carl chases him, but then stops at the entrance to another room. Instead of continuing the pursuit, he turns back and goes inside. What he finds changes everything. The room is filled with information about Merete, along with a live feed confirming that she is still alive. Carl immediately calls Marcus, informing him of her location and asking for urgent backup. Then he rushes toward the pressure chamber, desperate to stop what is happening. From the other side of the glass, he tries to keep Merete conscious and focused. But before he can act, Lars reappears. He pushes the pressure even higher and attacks Carl from behind, tightening a rope around his neck. As Carl struggles to break free, Assad suddenly returns and strikes Lars, knocking him unconscious. Not long after, backup finally arrives. Merete is rescued and rushed to the hospital. Carl and Assad begin to recover from their injuries, while doctors explain that Merete's condition is critical. After spending years inside a high-pressure environment, her body needs time to adjust. She is placed in an incubator to stabilize her condition, with the expectation that she will slowly recover. Soon after, Uf arrives to see his sister again. In the aftermath, Marcus offers Carl a chance to return to the homicide unit, but Carl refuses. Instead, he chooses to stay in Department Q, determined to continue working on forgotten cases. He asks for Assad to remain his partner, and this time Marcus agrees. Their badges are returned, and a new chapter begins. So the moral of the story is never trust a guy who invites you to a congress using someone else's name, and definitely don't play peekaboo while your dad is driving.